entities do have the same goals. We do have a strategic plan that is a continual, it's a work in progress always. And I agree with what you say. I don't know that that affects how we move as a board today, but I think it's important. And Chancellors, would you like to reply? Then the Commissioner asked to speak.
Well, in effect, I think that you would see, if you examined the 4 years of history, that there has been a very aggressive effort at collaboration and partnership that we will maintain. I believe today's discussion is not about drawing lines, not about building walls, it's about building bridges. And the hurdle that we have is the if you will, cleanup on language that is imprecise and that leaves us with a vague area of who does what. The end result, Governor Mosley, is that students are suffering because you're not getting the advising, you're not getting the classes that you want, you're not graduating in a timely fashion, and we are losing our competitiveness. The data is there and it's very clear. So a number of us have a sense of urgency about that. And it's a sense of urgency that really is, in many ways, more than just a decade long. And that's why, if you will, I am calling for decisiveness on the part of this board. I am asking the board to step up and make some decisions that relate to the fiduciary responsibilities that you have.
Governor Edwards was going to make a quick comment.
Yeah,
and then Commissioner.
When Bob Martinez was governor, 1986, 87, for the first time in history, and he asked me to chair this group, we had one meeting of the legislative leaders, the community college leaders, the private sector leaders, the governor's office. We all cooperated. We've all tried to cooperate. It's not a question of cooperation because everybody wants the same thing. To do the things that we're talking about here are things that will help us move forward because of the new setup that we're operating under. And everybody's for the same thing. When you get right down to the bottom line, we're all for the student. That's what we're here for. But to say that we can resolve the issues that we are addressing with this motion by sitting back and cooperating with each other, nobody in this world is more cooperative than our chairlady. She has cooperated until she's tired of cooperating. It ain't worked.
Thank you, Governor Edwards. Commissioner.
I guess I'm looking at a lot of this from a school district funding perspective. But I just, in terms of, I don't think litigation is working together, even if this is called a friendly suit. I don't think clearly that you're going to get where you want to go, and that is more money for higher education by the issue of whether you can raise tuition or not, because it's so much. I know, but that's in terms of reading this, and that's what is being focused upon. And the questions that I would have would be, I feel you're going to get where you want to go, you have to work with the legislature and the governor and this board and the presidents of the university. One of the questions I would ask, if you simply are able to raise tuition and fees, how does that really necessarily result in more money in the end? You may raise tuition and fees, but perhaps you're still not going to get additional funds from the state. And to me, working in a collaborative way is, yes, you need more money. I think that we can all agree upon that. But it's going to, in terms of, I would be focusing more upon the end results of the more money, and then working with the legislature in terms of how do you get there. For example, if the state does not put in the amount, and I'm thinking again back on public school model in terms of looking at what are the dollars that are needed and agreeing upon that. And it may never be exactly what you want, but then perhaps if the state puts in so much in the year, and then allow the universities to raise tuition for the balance of that amount. But I don't, again, with the tuition, and I could not vote on all three of these together, because I clearly see the concern in terms of enrollment. I mean, if you don't have the money and so on, you have to address those issues. But just simply, and also I'd like to go back in terms of the 10% and the 4%. The agencies have been asked to identify 10% in cuts up front, with the idea that we will probably have a 4% cut. And the plan is then to look at all of the different agencies' funding and their needs and their priorities. So it may not be just a simple 4% cut across the board. And so I believe, and then the other, again, the tuition and fees, and how is this, if you're not working with the legislature, going to impact Bright Futures? For instance, the funding is set each year based upon what the tuition and fees are going to be. So is there sufficient dollars? So there's so many issues that have to be worked out, and you have to work collaboratively.
Governor Edwards and the governor.
As the maker of the motion, it does make sense to me at this point that probably we should have take these three separate tuition, governance, and enrollment, and with the permission of the seconder, I will amend the motion to call for a vote on these three individually. And it appears to be the will of the majority of the group that on the question of tuition, that the last line under B, if budget reductions exceed 4%, be taken out. And it simply read, raise undergraduate tuitions and fees not to exceed 5%. And if that's the consensus, well, I would certainly go along with that as well.
Second.
Yes.
You agree with that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. It's been amended, and Dr. Chase has agreed to second the amendment.
Right. If I can just make a comment.
Certainly.
Basically, we can't remain in the status quo that we've been in with the state, the governor, the legislature, and the board of governors. We've been as cooperative, I believe, as is possible. When you look at what happened this year, what happened is there were three different visions that were looking at the university system, and each one of those visions did not crystallize. And what has ended up happening is that we are in a very deep budget cut situation when we shouldn't be there. When the legislature can give us centers of excellence to the tune of $100 million, they're doing that for the purpose of economic development. We're looking at educating students. We can't take that money and turn it around and use it for educating students, but because it has a specific purpose. And what this means is, to me at least, is that we need to have our universities functioning in the best possible manner with quality enhancement if we're going to use that center of excellence money effectively. And we can't do that. One of the suggestions here is to increase class sizes for faculty. Well, gee, that would be very easy to do if you have facilities to do it in. But as the Chancellor Rosenberg has been saying, we are having issues with some of our facilities, and particularly our classroom sizes. If your classroom sizes are already maxed out, how do you increase the classroom size? You cannot do it. So all of these